Going live, going live, going live. You're live. Hello, I am live, and I'm here with Jeff from TraumaType. Um, what did I do? Hi, Jeff. Good morning.
Morning, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. Happy Wednesday. Happy Mental Health Month. Um, I figured that we would. Okay, I'm ready to go now. I figured that we would. Thank you for coming on, first of all, and I figured you could give a little background about yourself and what you do, what your interests are, and then we can dive into some topics.
Well, my name is Jeff. I'm technically millennial Jeff, I guess. I was born in 1984. Uh,
Oh,
I have a channel called TraumaType, and I also have a new channel called AstroType. TraumaType was formerly the INTJ equation. I'm into Jungian typology. You can call it MBTI. I don't like to use MBTI. I think that's a really loaded term. um, And I wanted to change the name of the channel and the branding of the channel because I talk more than just INTJs. I really would like to correlate like typology, different personality types, and trauma and how the trauma affects each personality type and how it
ooh.
manifests and like how like this person, like I have avoidant personality disorder, and I kind of wonder if I'm like have Asperger's or autism or I'm it's the spectrum, there's a lot of overlap between the two, and we can get into that later. But I just want people to open up about their trauma. I just released a video where I get in my trauma quite a bit and my experiences with EMDR therapy. But there's a stigma behind it, and people don't want to talk about it. But it's kind of freeing. It's kind of you know kind of process it. You can't ignore it, but society wants us to keep it bottled up and pretend like it doesn't happen. And I also have another channel called Astrotype, which Jeff's going to go on next week. Um, Me and this another guy named Xeon. He's an ENTJ. I don't know if these terms make any sense to you guys. I can explain it later. He's on the spectrum as well. He's an astrologer. I'm not the astrologer. I'm studying it, and I understand it used to be in astrology, right? We can talk about that, of course. But we're like trying to find correlation between personality type and people's birth charts. And right now we're looking at like the north and south node, and we're finding like the dominant hero function. That's kind of that's looking promising so far. But we analyze celebrity birth charts. We analyze people's birth charts, just like everyday people like Jeff. We're gonna look at his birth chart and see what we can find, and kind of just spitball. Basically, we don't have anything concrete. I mean, there's nothing concrete about astrology anyway. So, but yeah, that's a little intro, I guess. I mean,
Okay, well, yeah, that's all of that is interesting to me. Let's start with, well, maybe you can kind of explain the types for people that don't know. And I'm interested in what the you said the term MBTI was loaded, so you prefer typology as a term.
yeah. Well, MBTI is a Myers-Briggs type indicator. It's a test, and I think tests in nature are flawed. Isabel Meyer, she took Carl Jung's work, who was a Swiss psychiatrist who basically had like a schizophrenic breakdown, if I understood it right. And he kind of came up with a lot of concepts, including typology. It was based off of a lot of like temperament style that I believe Plato talked about. And he based 16 types. Well, actually, I think 8 types at the time. Basically, there's 8 cognitive functions. This is a lot to explain. So you definitely have to, it's like astrology, not quite as deep, but very abstract, and there's a lot of moving small little simple pieces that are crammed together to make something
Yeah.
complex. Anyways, I'm an INTJ, which is a Myers-Briggs type indicator that stands for introverted, between introverted and extroverted. That's pretty self-explanatory for most people, I believe. The N is intuitive versus sensor. Basically, intuitives think more abstractly, more about what ifs, possibilities, future thinking, where sensors are more here and now, concrete, what's in front of us. T is thinking versus feeling, which if you're a thinker, basically, do you lead with your heart or your head, more or less to simplify it. And judging and perceiving, which is totally false with the MBTI. Judgers, they typically like to plan their day out. They're not less sporadic. They're usually more straight to the point, stick to schedules. Um, and perceivers, they're more go with the flow, kind of let things happen. But with the MBTI, they got the typing system wrong. Like all the introverted types are the P and J are really backwards. So INTJs are actually INTPs, and in socionics, which is the Russian spin on MBTI and Jungian typology, they have it correctly because we lead with a perceiving function, which is introverted intuition, which is kind of strange, like extroverted intuition, which is what Jeff leads by. Introverted intuition is, it's kind of hard to put into words. Basically, you kind of like process things internally and you look for the hidden patterns and hidden meanings in things. So basically, like I got this big daydream world in my head and I'm stuck in it a lot and I'm kind of weird and stuff. And I think a lot of people like INTJs especially get typecast as autistic, I think, because I've been called, maybe I am autistic. Like I said, the avoidant personality disorder, there's a lot of overlap. Sorry if I'm giving a long-winded explanation, but
No, that's what I got you on for. Um, I mean, it's possible that you are. I know in the twice exceptional group I'm part of, which is gifted neurodivergence, there's a lot of INTJs in that group that
yeah.
show up. And so you mentioned like a connection between different types and trauma, or wanting to map out how either how each type is susceptible to trauma or how trauma affects each type in unique ways. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I worked in a psych hospital. Now I work in a drug rehab facility. I've
Oh,
worked in prisons in the past. And well, most of the criminals stereotypically and just by my experience are what are known as ESTPs, basically extroverted sensors. They're ones that they lead by extroverted sensation. That's their lead hero dominant function. Basically, they're here in the moment, and ESFPs too. But they're ones that cause probably 60-70% of the crime. I mean, it sounds bad to say that, but just by my experience, that's what it is. But anyways, like I notice in the psych hospitals, they make up a huge, large percentage of that population too. And they're the ones with like the antisocial personality disorder, which doesn't sound like someone who's like, you might think of like avoidant personality as antisocial. Antisocial in the psychological terms doesn't mean quiet and keep to yourself. That's asocial. Antisocials, you're against society. You commit crimes, you might do drugs, you're reckless, you're dangerous. Basically, that's the clinical diagnosis of a psychopath or a sociopath. There isn't an official diagnosis for psychopath or sociopath. That's probably the closest thing to it. It's not quite exactly the same. Psychopath and sociopaths have like narcissistic elements to it. I think they definitely have that borderline personality disorder, which is a really popular term floating around in the mental health world today. Basically, like you have huge emotional regulation, you kind of don't feel yourself. Self-harm, like cutting and things, is often highly associated with that. Especially ESFPs are really prone to getting that.
because of the
And
F, the
what's
strong
that?
F. Because of the strong F,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
feeling.
I think that's one reason. Like they kind of see like borderline personality disorder as antisocial personality disorder for women. That's something that they say a lot. I mean, women can have antisocial personality disorder and men can have borderline, but it's typically one or the other. And, you know, more men are thinking and more women are feeling. But then again, it's blanket statements. And, you know, this isn't something these are just observations that I made in my head just as I'm going through, because I try to, on my channel, trauma type, INTJ equation formally. One of the big things I do is I get people and I interview them. The one thing that I try to get them to open up to, and people rarely do, is about their past trauma. So, you know, if we can't figure this out without people discussing it, you know, like I can't read your mind, even though it's kind of like an INTJ stereotype thing that we can read your mind and stuff. Well,
Oh,
you can, you know, but yeah, I think like my avoidant personality disorder, a lot of intuitive thinkers seem to get it a lot. I definitely seen some INFPs get it, and some ISTPs, but it's usually INTPs and INTJs that get this disorder, and I am one with it. And it seems like autism, giftedness, that sort of thing, is intuitive thinkers as well, and feelers sometimes. But like you said, INTJs, I like my friend's an ENTJ. He's smart, I think. very, very smart. He was like, he talked about it. We just did his birth chart, Xeon. I just released that video last night. I could give you the links for that if you want to post it below or whatever. But yeah, he just talks about like his struggles in school. Like he was like really smart and did all the school work, but his parents held him up to a high expectation. It was just too much for him. So he started failing on purpose, basically.
One thing I do want to talk about, and you mentioned, is that's one thing I'm trying to do with this channel and with my men's group and my other groups, is getting people to open up about their trauma and their mental health issues, and kind of modeling it or showing that it's okay, or creating a space where people are comfortable doing that. And I find particularly in men and men's mental health, there's kind of a stigma around. They see it as vulnerability or weakness. Do you find that in any of the work you do? In, like in men in particular, and maybe ways to help them open up about their mental health?
Yeah, at the job I work now, I work night shifts, so I don't have a lot to do with the programming, but there's mostly men there. It's probably like 3-to-1 men versus women. I think men just have it tougher in society. I mean, traditionally women probably had it tougher, but now in the last 30, 40 years, I think men have it tougher,
Oh,
and
I
it's
would
getting
agree.
worse and worse. And yeah, they have more substance abuse problems. I think men are more prone to be like, they're always like women get raped and stuff, men get raped, but men are more prone to being victims of violent crime. So yeah, but
And they have the
men,
highest suicide rates too.
we do. Yeah, like I noticed like when women have a suicide attempt, it's like I took 5 Midol PM, but men's like, I tried hanging myself or shooting myself and the gun didn't go off, or I tried jumping on a train. It's very violent, more, highly more, I can't really think of the term. You're going to have a higher rate of death, basically, like a higher succession rate with their attempts. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not that I'm downplaying women or anything of their struggles, but the like men, they'll when they try to kill themselves, they usually try to kill themselves. Women, it's like a cry for attention or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I've definitely seen women, like there's one woman there who slit her own throat and stuff like that.
I do think that men are currently underserved and stigmatized more, even by the psychology profession itself. The APA came out with those guidelines for working with males that were very controversial. Chris Ferguson, a psychologist, just recently did a paper breaking down the guidelines and kind of showing how they got it wrong and ways to correct it to make mental health therapy more helpful to men. So I'm seeing just that in the therapy and psychology world. So finding places for men to turn where they can open up about their mental health, and they're not going to be stigmatized or problematized or demonized. It seems like it's getting harder and harder to do.
Yeah, like you said, I'm trying to make a safe space, not just for men, for women, whoever. But and another thing is like I think it's feminism is a huge thing that's causing that. Like
I
women,
think
they'll say like they want a man to open up and be emotional and be vulnerable, but a lot of times when men do that and open up and be vulnerable, they get criticized. They get called, I don't know if you want cussing on your channel, pussies. We get called little bitches, whatever. We get called like women. Oh, stop acting like a woman when we do try to open up and be vulnerable. So there's a lot of hypocrisy there, you know, kind of like you're raised, like, like if you're a kid and you fall down, you're a boy and you scrape your knee, your dad tells you, get up, stop crying, tough up, you should. And I catch myself doing that with my son sometimes. And I got to think like, okay, he's a 6-year-old little boy. He needs to learn to be emotional and not be afraid to show his emotions. And it's just the
oh,
way that we're conditioned, and it's just the way that we're stereotyped, and it's not helpful. And
did you
women,
experience that growing up yourself?
yeah, I mean, I could probably write a book on like all my childhood and how shitty it was.
Oh,
And do you mind the cuss words? I'm sorry.
no. I mean, I don't know the YouTube rules, honestly. So I'm going to try to keep the channel up as long as I can, but I don't really censor myself. So feel free.
Yeah, I don't really think they care about
I
cussing.
think they like bump you down a notch or something for curse words, but I don't think you lose your. I don't
Yeah,
think they deplatform you.
yeah. I don't. I think this is like F this, F that. That's when it gets. if you get reported, I guess. I don't know. I'll try to keep it PG-13 at least.
I'm not big on censorship. I'd rather you just express
Yeah.
yourself however you need. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. The environment I grew up in is my my mom and stepdad were very narcissistic, borderline. My biological dad, who left my life when I was 5, probably for the best, probably had antisocial personality disorder. And I always had trouble, like, because I remember one time I was on my bike or tricycle and I fell down and I hurt myself and I started crying and my dad started laughing at me. I remember being just really confused. Then I asked him, I had little bit of contact with my biological dad during my adult life, and I asked him about that. And he said he was just trying to basically laugh it off or something. So that was one instance that kind of confused me. I don't know if that would confuse someone who's, neurotypical or whatever. And my parents, I couldn't express any emotion. I couldn't express my needs. I kind of suffered from severe neglect. I was lucky to get one meal a day until I started going to school.
Did you have siblings or anything, or were you an only child?
I have one sister who's 5 years younger than me. Then I have 3 other sisters I had never met on my dad's side who were basically young enough to be my kids. But things started getting a little bit better when my sister started getting older, because like she used to sit there and like defend my parents and laugh like, ha ha ha, I used to eat butter. I used to love eating butter. And like, you didn't love eating butter. That was the only thing you could find to eat. You were hungry. And she's like started putting like 2 and 2 together, and she's like, oh yeah, things weren't ideal growing up.
What happened when you tried to show emotion or express emotion?
I was yelled at. I don't think my mom and stepdad ever really talked to me as a kid. They just yelled at me. They screamed at me nonstop. So it didn't really matter what I said or did. I got screamed at. So
No
I
matter
mean,
what.
my go-to was learning to avoid them. Then I went to school. I was at isolative neglect, I think is the term for it, basically, where you're not socialized as a kid and you're not really around people your age or around that many adults. I was around like my parents and my grandparents, and I went to, one day I had to go to school. So I was really awkward, and the only models I had were people who were borderline narcissistic and all those nasty cluster B personality disorder, basically. So people didn't like me, and I was bullied relentlessly growing up.
Did you have
So
any friends at all?
it was
Neighborhood
like hit or
kids or?
miss. Like some school years I did, some school years I didn't. I mean, there was always like I'd find the other loner weird kid.
Mhm.
And there were some years where I kind of had success and I was hanging out with some like a big group of friends, like during like fifth, sixth, like sixth grade, seventh, eighth grade. I played basketball and football with a pretty big group of guys.
Oh,
But then when I got to high school, things got kind of went downhill again.
oh, what happened there?
Well, I don't know. About seventh grade, when I turned 11 or so, pretty much when I hit puberty, I just woke up one day and it was like a sledgehammer to my face. That's when the avoidant personality disorder, whatever you want to call it, really started hitting me.
Mm.
I just couldn't communicate. I couldn't look people in the eyes. I couldn't have a conversation with people. Those are very traits of autism, but that starts about 3 or 4 when you're autistic, not 11, 12. And the depression was just like, I just woke up one day and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. But then I still was like, kind of like, okay, I just didn't know what to do. And I felt like I was out of my body. I didn't know who I was. Then I was playing with this group of friends, and for whatever reason, I drifted away from them in high school. I guess maybe they started with liking girls, and I didn't have any success with that at all. Um, and I started like listening to metal, and I grew my hair long, and I wore black and stuff, and yeah, and that's been about the time Columbine happened. And
Oh,
people are like, I was a weird, quiet kid with the long hair wearing the black, and I was a school shooter. I and that archetype kind of got thrown
were
on
you
me.
the only one like that, or were there a
No, I
group
had
of you?
another friend who I met in high school. I knew him a little bit before, and we weren't really friends, but he was an ENTP, and we started hanging out. Then we kind of got this other INTP guy, and we all like metal and stuff like that. But with the Columbine stuff and the school shooter stuff, I realized, hey, people don't pick on me as much. Oh, I'm getting an echo. Maybe I should put these on.
Oh, maybe it's
Yeah.
my mic. I just moved my mic.
Okay.
Are you still getting it?
Yeah, I'm getting on my end. I have my headphones plugged in.
Oh,
They're not
okay.
on, not working. Uh, I don't know if anybody's out there with I don't know if they can comment or whatever, but
Not so far. I did promote it this morning, but
yeah, I put it on my server. Anyways, where were we? I was talking about
well,
my
Columbine and the fact that people were no longer scared of you, you discovered.
yeah, yeah. Well, they kind of put the stereotype of school shooter on me, so I embraced the archetype. Archetype is a Jungian term, basically. So I started pretending I was a Satanist
Oh my
and
god.
this and that. But people left me alone. It was a defense mechanism. I really didn't want to hurt anybody or shoot anybody, or I was more of a me and my friend were more of like a pranksters and stuff. But yeah, that was kind of like I got picked on about 75% less, so I just went with it, and that kind of carried me all the way up to adulthood.
We would have totally hung out. I swear we have parallel lives because my crisis started in seventh grade. Sounded very similar, and this was Satanic Panic in the '80s. I played Dungeons and Dragons. I was gay. All of that was perceived as devil back then. So I was pegged as the devil worshiper in my town. And
Hmm.
same thing you did. I realized that I could use it, like use the stigma in my favor. And I got people to leave me alone because they were scared of me. So I tried to be as scary as possible. I wore black. I burned black candles in the backyard so the neighbors could see me. And I played up that image of Satanism. Now, today I'm a real Satanist, but back then I was doing it the same thing you just described. It was kind of like a survival mechanism.
So you're like Anton LaVey Satanist, like that
I'm
brand.
more definitely not TST. They're way too woke. But that's Satanic Temple. I'm more sympathetic to Church of Satan if I had to, but I'm not. I'm independent. I don't subscribe to everything about Church of Satan. I do have there are points of disagreement with it.
Yeah, the Satanic Temple, they have a pretty big presence in Tucson, or at least they did. I haven't heard much of them lately. I remember they used to go
Oh
to,
yeah, I think one of the founders is from Arizona or something. They have a
oh,
big chapter down there. Yeah.
I remember they're like going to the park and they had like reading to kids and some weird stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, and they have the After School Satan Club. They just had a big
Yeah.
Satan Con in Boston, and they have videos circulating on social media of this girl ripping up a Bible, and that stuff totally turns me off. Like that's not what my Satanism is about at all.
So it's like Satanists are atheists, but they use Satan as symbolic symbol for like pleasure
Yeah, an
or
archetype,
hedonism.
like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a Satanist. I used to be agnostic. Now I just consider myself spiritual, I guess.
Hmm. Me too. Since discovering Satanism, that's a source of spirituality for me. But I was an atheist most of my life before that, and now it
Okay.
gives me that the closest thing to spirituality that I've had as an adult. So, what happened after high school? Things start to
Well,
level off.
what was that last part after high school?
Did things start to level off as you entered adulthood?
Uh, well, not really. I was a year ahead of most of my friends in school, so I graduated. So sometimes I'd go back and hang out with them because I had no one to hang out
Oh,
with. I was still young enough to pull it off. I went to community college. I majored in manufacturing electronics. I changed my major half a dozen times at least.
God.
Uh,
Same here.
really?
And I
It's
got came out with an electronics degree. I feel like I'm listening to my own story when you talk.
well, at least you graduated. I never graduated. I'm like
Took
11,
4.5 years.
11 classes away, about 33 credits from my bachelor's in psychology. I don't know if I'm going to finish or not. I just can't be conventional. So
I'm the same with formal school. I don't learn through formal schooling at all. I learn very well if I'm left to learn it with my own method. But
yeah,
I don't respond to formal schooling at all.
it's like I learn more about psychology on my own than them. Like they want to teach me certain things about psychology, but there's certain things that are more beneficial that they don't want you to know, or not necessarily want you to know, but that's not a part of their guidelines, in the
Mhm.
DSM-5 and their textbooks and their empirical evidence.
Mhm.
So I want to know what made you stray away from astrology. I think that's been like a big awakening for me.
Well, when I was like 19 or 20, there was this little New Age bookstore in my town that I discovered, and they had this meditation group, and I eventually started getting New Age books. I started getting the tarot, crystals. Eventually, I became Wiccan,
Mm,
pagan, and I went to. There was an astrologer there that did readings for us, and I was so blown away by how accurate. Like he summed me up better than almost anybody I had met up to that point. And so I was inspired to study. I was like, this, I can do what he's doing. I can make a career out of this. This is my new career. I was all excited. I took a correspondence course with the AFA. There was no formal training at the time, but the AFA did offer a correspondence course, and then you could take their test and get certified, which is what most professional astrologers did. And somewhere in the course of studying it, well, I realized that I'd given this astrologer my wrong birth time when I looked at my birth certificate. And I was going by the time my mom told me, but she was wrong when I saw my actual certificate. So I realized the whole chart was off. So this chart he was using to describe me so accurately was not even an accurate chart. And that was kind of the first little chink. So I started exploring why that was and getting deeper. And this is back when you had to do it manually with the ephemeris, and table of houses,
yeah.
and it just started to fall apart conceptually for me. I couldn't connect what was happening in the sky and the stars to what was actually going on with real life human beings in their lives. And I lost faith in it through over studying it. And
Mm.
I decided that I couldn't take money from people for something I no longer believed in. So I had to abandon that career path.
How far off of your birth time were you? You remember?
I was born just after midnight. You know, I don't actually know my birth time now because it was either 12:50 or 1:25. I probably only by a couple of hours. But it's in my rising sign changed. Like I know that there's the full moon conjunct retrograde Saturn, and that was on the zenith, and then all my other planets were below the horizon. That was the only two planets in the sky when I was born. I was born around midnight. And so the chart I gave him, it had some of the planets over the horizon. They were in different houses. The rising sign was not accurate. So it threw the whole chart off just because of the way my planets are positioned.
Okay. Well, do you have your
But
birth
he still
certificate?
got me accurate. Like he psychologically, he read me pretty accurately. I just don't know how much was coming from the actual chart and how much was coming from his intuition and perception.
Yeah. A lot of it is that. I think you have like an esoteric element to your own psyche if as a reader. Do you have your birth certificate? Because I know next week we're gonna do your birth chart reading, but if we don't have an
Yep.
accurate.
I do have
Oh,
it. I have to dig it out and get the accurate time. But
okay.
I'm looking forward to that because I want to see how it compares to this first guy
Yeah.
from what 30 years ago now, maybe 40. Yikes.
Yeah. If you can, and you grow a lot as a person in that time too, and that might have been like somebody who, like your actual birth time where you're growing into as well, or something like that too.
And there's there like your birth part chart progresses. They do, and then there's the precession of the equinoxes too, which I remember can alter the present from when you were born.
I'm not the astrologer. Zion definitely is. He's into evolutionary astrology, which is kind of like he's Christian, but he's an evolutionary astrologer who believes in like reincarnation and like
Oh,
growing
fun.
your soul. So I don't know how that I mean it
Well,
contradicts, but
I'm even
definitely
more excited now.
yeah. But if you can get that to us sooner than later, because he likes to study it and get notes on it. He hasn't talked to me in a while. He kind of goes
Oh
dark out.
yeah, I'll get it to you today.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can put in a little group chat thing we got. And I forgot where we were going. We just kind of got off
Oh,
top.
we were kind of talking about like college and what happened after high school and your interest in psychology.
Yeah, yeah. Like it was stupid. Like when I was 17, 16, 17, I was going into college. My grandma and grandpa were like the only people that treated me decent growing up in my life, really. And they were far from perfect people, but it was the best I had, and I loved them. Uh, like I told my grandpa I wanted to go into like psychology. I already kind of knew what I wanted to go into, and he made us some comment about it, and I decided not to do it.
Oh, what do you say?
He just said I was stupid or something along. I don't remember exactly what he said,
Oh,
but I just had really low self-esteem and no direction, and I didn't know who I was. And so I trained for my I thought about going in like immigration, border patrol, so I was going for that for a while. Went in like web design, went to criminal justice. Then I went to religious studies, and I settled on psychology. But I don't know if I'm even going to finish it. I was thinking about getting a PhD and becoming a psychologist, but again, with my unconventional views, are they going to give me a PhD after spending tens of thousands of dollars and countless hours of time? They got the internet now. I think like we're in the age of Aquarius. Pluto just went into Aquarius. It's like we're in like a dawning of a new era, and I think the internet's is the biggest double-edged sword humanity's ever seen.
Now we
But
have the AI.
AI, yeah, I don't know where things are going to go with that. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to replace me or what I do.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Like there's things like life coaching and counseling. Like if you do want to get into the helping profession, there are pathways into it, I think, for people like you without going the PhD route.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, I'm a behavioral health technician. I'm not, I don't know if I'm the best supportive person for that. I'm more of an authoritarian there, I guess, because I don't like putting with people's crap.
But
But I was a
I
case
worked in
manager.
patient psych for a year, so you seem like like you have the ability to listen empathetically, though.
I do, but there's just a lot of entitlement. Like I'm a junkie and I've been abused, so everybody owes the world. Everybody
No,
in the
we
world
don't.
owes me something.
No,
So
we
that's the
don't.
mentality that 80% of them have, and I can't
Clean
stand
your
it.
ass
So,
up and join society.
like I worked in the prisons, I heard that, like I'm the victim here, even though, you went and stole cars and shot people up. And yeah, you're the victim. Like, I had a shitty childhood and I'm not trying, when I was younger, I was definitely not the ideal person. I still am not. I'm striving to be the best version of myself that I can, but I never went out and like hurt people and sold drugs and that kind of crap, and like I never thought once shooting heroin or smoking fentanyl was going to solve my problems.
You seem to me like I think just trying to be a good person brings you closer to the ideal person. But you seem to me like you're trying to do something like be a positive, have a positive effect on the world and like pro social.
Yeah, definitely talking to Xeon. Like I started this channel, I always had like an inkling to write or some creative outlet like the videos or the podcast to kind of share with the world. I was begrudging to do it because of my social problems, but then I met Xeon on my Discord server and he pretty much went over what the North Node. I think I mentioned the North Node could be like the dominant function in MBTI. And pretty much like the North Node and South Node, I don't know if you're familiar with it. The North Node, they're like different phases of the
I
moon.
remember them from astrology and I remember the little symbol for them, but I didn't really use them in the work I did.
Yeah, I think they are overlooked in a lot of
They were
ways.
presented as optional, but like that was the advanced stuff.
I think it's just like what we're looking at is just important as your rising sign or your sun sign. It seems like it's nothing that takes up any physical space in space. But anyways, like I have a Gemini North node in the eighth house, and my South node is in Sagittarius in the second house. And the eighth house represents like sexuality, psychology, the darkness. It's ruled by Scorpio, which my ascendant and Pluto and Saturn are in. And like esoteric, uh, occultism, stuff like that. And the Gemini is kind of like, it's not exactly extroverted, but it's rational. I have my moon there, so I rationalize my emotions a lot. I kind of want to probe people. It's about digging deep and getting into people. And the eighth house is like that too. So that how it lines up, like the interviewing people, writing about things, thinking about things very deeply. It's like my introverted intuition, my NI is like trying to get into people's psyches. And because I've been told I'm scary because like I have poor social skills. So when I talk to people, and people told me like you're penetrating my soul, man, and stuff like
Oh
that.
my
And,
god. I
you know,
love that though. That's the kind of people
yeah,
I want to talk to.
I don't want to talk about the weather or football or the indigestion you got from your 12-day-old hot dog at the ball game you got. I want to talk about like what makes you tick, like
Yeah.
what drives you, and what made you who you are and stuff like that. And
Me
the
too. I
deep,
want to jump in the deep end.
yeah, and deep in, with my snorkel and stuff, and that scares people. So
Yeah, I
that's
guess
kind
it
of
does. Or
what's
it
that?
can. I said I guess it does, or it can. If you're doing it, trying to do it with the wrong people. I had to learn that lesson too.
Yeah,
And with people like us, it's hard to tell when I don't read when it's not welcomed. Like if they don't verbally say stop talking to me about this, I'm not gonna pick up that they're
yeah. No,
uncomfortable about it.
I don't pick up social cues very well.
I don't
Like
either.
I remember when I was in therapy one time, and one of the therapists showed me like this interactive software program where the kid from Harry Potter, I think Radcliffe, his name,
Oh,
Daniel
Daniel
Radcliffe,
Radcliffe.
he was doing this thing about like he hosted it. And there's like people's facial expressions, and you had to pick out the facial expressions. And like I had trouble doing it, like the sad face, the happy face, the mad face, so on and so forth. And I struggled with it. And I really had to like go home and study and figure this out. And I kind of studied like micro expressions and body language and stuff. I had to study that, and that kind of helped me a lot.
Oh
And the
wow.
Jungian typology, that helped me a lot too. So what in INTJs, we have FE trickster. Basically, it's archetypal, like each of the 8 cognitive functions go in a row. The bottom 4 are your shadow functions, and the 7th one is your trickster function. It's basically the function that, well, it plays tricks on you, kind of think you have a grasp on it, but then it will
So
like
you're
slap
not the trickster, but the function is the trickster
the
in
function is
relation to your psyche.
it's the archetypal attitude of that function. Everybody has them in order. And if you want a better explanation of this, you can watch my channel. It's a theory by John Beebe, who's a Jungian analyst and a psychiatrist. Anyways, INTJ's trickster functions are extroverted feeling, and our demon function, which is the 8th function, is introverted
Ooh.
sensation. Those are like the people functions, basically. Like extroverted feeling is you want to make people happy, your emotions are outward instead of inward. We're compared to introverted feeling, kind of like picking up on social cues, going with the group, like their group ethics rather than your own personal morality, like you having your own likes and dislikes compared to like just going with the flow compared to what the crowd wants. So we INTJs don't have much of a sense of that. And introverted sensation is like traditions and safety and doing things cohesively with the society and things like that. And the demon function is kind of like the archetypal attitude of like hatred, like what the person hates. So yeah. So we kind of just go against the grain. We kind of don't really care about the ethics of the group and the
Yeah.
emotions of others. And we can kind of like one thing that INTJs and myself kind of get flabber or bad rep about is we rationalize emotion. So people come to us and with their problem, and they don't always want a solution. They just want to be heard out and emotional validation and all that stuff. But we kind of think like, well, if you just solved your problem, you wouldn't be feeling this way. So we try to give a solution, and people don't like that.
Yeah, I'm a problem solver too, and I encounter that a lot, particularly with women, where they don't want that kind of help. They want emotional validation, and I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be giving them.
Yeah.
What is the demon type for the ENTP?
It's extroverted sensation. So I've
Yeah,
been
I'd say.
so basically that's reality.
Yeah.
Uh what's real, what's not, what's concrete. It's short-term memory. Kind of like it could be like athleticism. You could tie in the athleticism. Like a lot of the top athletes are ESTPs, ESFPs, entertainers who are just in a present moment by default. So that could be it. And you have introverted feeling trickster.
Is that the trickster?
Yeah. So you don't know exactly how you feel well, which sounds
Oh
very,
my God, yes. I never know what emotions are mine and which ones are coming from other people.
yeah, because you have the FV child, which is the 3rd function. So if you take my function stack and you flip it, it's the ENTPs. Like INTJs have the ENTP
Oh
shadow
right, yeah.
and vice versa. So like I have NI for my hero function, you have NE. I have TE, you have TI, FI, FE. SESI, then it mirrors each other basically.
Well, that's interesting because I relate to you a lot from hearing your story, even though our functions are so opposite.
Yeah, I was kind of questioning if you were ENFP during the podcast because you kind of did seem like you had FI in a lot of ways. Like I can't remember.
I was probably ENFP like growing up more, but I developed. I've always had both. I've always been had the intellect part, the rationality, reason, but I have intense. To me, they're one function. Like the T and the F is almost it hits all at once. The when I have an emotional reaction, there's a big cognitive reaction to go with it, and vice versa. So I've always had a hard time separating the two. But lately, especially with all the trauma work I've done, I'm much more operating out of the T than the F because I can manage the F better. It's less of a dominant um, aspect to my psyche right now.
I think I have some visuals. If you could, I don't know if you could share a screen. I'm sure you can with
Oh
Zoom. So
yeah, you should be able to.
like maybe give people, if anybody's watching or future viewers of this, a better idea. I don't have the ENTP function made up because I'm redoing everything. I reformatted my computer and I lost a lot of stuff, but this is something I made. Oh, great. It's kind of cut off. Okay, I got to redo that. Anyways, I'll share my screen here real quick. You able to see that?
Yep.
So for people at home, this is the INTJ's stack. The hero function is basically like your go-to, what
Is that considered your dominant?
your dominant function, hero function. This is the John Beebe lingo, the archetypes. Like there's a hero archetype. The mother, father, or parent is kind of like your sense of responsibility. There's a lot of theories that I know we don't have a lot of time here. You got to get going pretty quick, so I'll try to run through these if this is okay. I don't know if this is the direction you want to go.
I'm fine with it. This is fascinating to me.
So this is like basically like your sense of responsibility. Extroverted thinking is well, your thoughts. Like that's one reason why I'm doing the interviews. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I'm always trying to prod people. And introverted thinking is more like, well, I want to see for myself. I want to get all the information. I want to come to conclusion myself. TE has a lot of faults, like especially if you have the TE hero up here, like ENTJs, ESTJs, they're more prone to like, oh, I need this empirical evidence. I need this expert with this credential to tell me this is true or not. Where a TI user are more like, well, I want to get the facts and come to my own conclusion. FI is introverted feeling. Your feelings are inside, they're deep, internal. They don't you don't express them outwardly as much. Likes, dislikes. Like I have a lot of favorites. Like my wall behind me, you can see is my wall of FI I'm trying to build. You probably can't really see what's on there, but anyways, that's a child function. It's kind of like your level of immaturity. Basically, that's how the archetype bleeds out, where you're immature. Like INTJs are called selfish, kind of when we kind of are. We have to develop it. And it's kind of like where you could be like a good or a bad person. Like ENTPs kind of have the problem because they have the trickster down here where FE is, they have FI. And especially ESTPs, because that's kind of like, I guess, your sister type, you can say, because you're only one letter off, which I don't really like to use, but for lack of a better term in time here, kind of you go off what the ethics of other people and you don't know exactly how you feel about a certain situation or subject. Does that resonate at all with you at all?
I have the opposite.
You think you have the opposite?
Yeah, I'm very clear about my thoughts and feelings on the subject, and I rarely, if it doesn't match other people, then I tend to dismiss theirs. I don't feel the need to conform to other people's views on
Okay.
it if I'm very clear about it myself.
And a lot of
And the
people,
bottom four are the shadow functions.
yeah, those are their shadow function. This is the opposing personality. And there's this other YouTuber named CS Joseph who kind of turned me on to psychology or the Jungian typology. I definitely strayed away from him because he's pretty narcissistic and makes very bold claims. And he's the wrong type as he says he is. But more on another time, maybe. That's kind of like what works against your hero function. Like this is like your hero and your opposing personality. It opposes your ego, your personality. So that shadows that. That's always something that's fighting that. The extroverted intuition, which is the ENTP's stack, is down here, and it'd be vice versa for ENTP to be up here. So that makes us kind of paranoid about the intentions of others. We can be very paranoid and distrusting with people. We can kind of like be the biggest pessimist in the world. Nihilism, like Friedrich Nietzsche is supposed to be INTJ, some argue INFJ. We're kind of like, what's the point, basically, because everything is screwed. Then the cynics function, the cynics is Latin for old man. Like that's the sin, like the senator. Pretty much that means like old man. And this is like the cantankerous old fart in your psyche. And it's our TI is very critical of our own thoughts. So we're always, oops, I don't know what I did there. Always looking for external validation with our thinking through like written sources or people or credentials. So if we don't develop this, we kind of think we're stupid. I grew up thinking I was stupid. And if you're not careful and you don't fact check your TE, you can think you're right. And it almost works like a trickster function. And you can be dead wrong about something because your NI kind of imagine it and jump to the conclusion. And you can be totally wrong. And well, you have to eat crow eventually. Now I talked about the trickster function, FE, not picking up on emotions and morals of other people and social cues. Then SI demon.
Wow. I think I learned more about typology today than I ever have before studying it on my own.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
starting
goal.
to, it's starting to become more clear. I mean, I know the basic typology, but the function stack hierarchy is not something I really got into much. And now I'm starting to see it kind of reminds me of the Enneagram, which is another thing I wanted to touch on if you're familiar with it. It seems very simple on the surface, but once you dig into it, it's very intricate, nuanced, and complex.
Yeah, I'm not as well versed on it as I am with Jungian stuff, but I thought it was a 5W6, but I think I'm a 5 wing 4, more likely. What are you?
I'm an 8-7, 8 wing 7, the Challenger.
So you're more like
You're pretty sure
assertive.
you're a 5 though.
What's that?
That's you're pretty sure you're a 5. That's the like the
Yeah.
rationalist or the intellectual.
Yeah, those are the ones that are deeply introverted and dialed themselves, and like knowledge is like a coping mechanism for me, basically.
Oh,
Because like when I
you're
was
very
like,
good at it.
well, thank you. I don't think I'm on the gifted scale or anything like that. I think I have above average intelligence, but
I mean, you could be twice exceptional. It's a spiky profile. You have like
yeah.
strengths and certain peaks that you're strong in, and certain valleys where you're not.
Like because I was isolated a lot as a kid. When I was about 7, 8 years old, I had this old, big, full volume of encyclopedias that I had, and I would just
Oh
read
yeah,
those. I
yeah,
didn't
me too.
understand it all, but I would read them.
Me too. I love growing up reading the encyclopedias. We had the World Book. I'd read them all the time, and the Childcraft. One thing I like about the Enneagram is it has like each type has the levels. Like as you're going through stress, it has a description of what that looks like as you move into more stress or away from stress, and then your wings, or as you grow and develop it's dynamic and it shows progress instead of just this static picture of your psyche at any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
We do only have a few minutes, and I mean, I would love if you wanted to come back for a part two. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. But one thing I did want to touch on, you mentioned therapy, and I was wondering how therapy has helped you, what therapy has helped you, if it's helped you, if you could maybe talk a little about your therapeutic journey.
I would say I started therapy probably about 10 years ago for the first time. I was having a bit of a psychotic break, actually. It's something that sounds like Carl Jung went through, and it's kind of like, I think it was like a beginning of a spiritual awakening, like a Kundalini experience, if
Oh,
you will.
was it just spontaneous?
It was. That's the time where I was like, I got demoted at the prison. I worked there another year, and I said, I'm tired of this. I just want, and that's like a Saturn return too. That's a year. That's about the time where you had your Saturn return, which was a whole other hour. Anyways, like I want to quit prison. I want to go back to school. I want to find out who I am because I just had no clue who I was. I was miserable working in a prison, stressed out, extra PTSD on top, on top of stuff I already had. So I quit, went back to school, was just delivering pizza. Then all of a sudden I started just hallucinating. And I wasn't truly psychotic because I knew I was hallucinating. I knew it wasn't real. I'm trying to remember the first time I did it. I think I was driving down the road and I saw like these asteroids in the sky or meteors or something, but they weren't like realistic. They looked like they're drawn like little kid by markers or crayon, and they were like falling down. And I'm like, what the hell? Okay. And I was like, and it would just happen every once in a while. Like one time I was at work at Pizza Hut where I delivered pizzas while I was working part-time going to school, and I looked outside, I could see the rain, I could hear it, I could smell it. I walked outside and it was bone dry.
Oh
And just,
wow. So did you sought therapy yourself?
yeah, so I went to therapy and she suggested I go see a psychiatrist. So I went to a nurse practitioner who's specialized in psychiatry. And I got put on antipsychotics, which caused me to have some side effects.
Oh.
But they got rid of the psychosis, all the things went away, and I did that. But I think that was just the beginning of a long, brutal awakening for me.
Are you still in that process, do you think? Or has it
I
stabilized?
I haven't had any psychosis in probably about 10 years. It was very brief. It only lasted a few months. But definitely a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of suicidality growing up, and some as an adult. I just went through a big mental break. That's why I took like a 5-6 month break from my YouTube and stuff, because I was,
Oh. What helps you with the suicidality and or the trauma?
well, I got back on antidepressants. I think a lot of it, what's caused it was EMDR therapy, which is a video I just released.
Yeah, I watched it last night.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So you have an idea what it is. I probably can't explain it in 8 minutes because you have to get going, but basically it's where you close your eyes, bring up a traumatic memory, and you're triggered to move your eyes from left to right, and that activates your left and right brain. You process the traumatic memories, and it brings up a lot of nasty stuff. Like it made me very suicidal, depressed, very
So
snappy.
just the act of having the memories being recalled called back up.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the kind of the gist of it, but it reprocesses these memories. And I think the short time, the year, 6 months, whatever it's been, I've been in EMDR, the other 8-9 years of therapy, it's been more beneficial. Plus psychedelics helped a lot too. LSD has been a big precursor for me, I think, but it kind of stopped working. I think, like they say, once you got the message, stop knocking at the door. It wasn't like a cure-all like a lot of people claim, but
Oh.
it helped,
Well, is there anything that you want to wrap up with? I know you have your channel, or any blogs, websites, any upcoming videos or events you want to promote, and anything you send me, I'll put in the description as well.
Okay, well, Astrotype's one channel I would appreciate if you guys, watch the content. It's just the beginning.
And I'm going
I
to be on next week,
He'll be
getting my
on next
chart
week.
read.
I got to I'm trying to talk to Xeon and try to find a better platform than Zoom. I prefer StreamYard, but we can't annotate as freely as we can on Zoom. But yeah. But anyways, once we get that figured out, I'll give you the link. I used to have a website, the INTJ equation. I shut it down. I was spending like over $100 a month just on like
Oh wow!
subscriptions and stuff, just try to make my project work. And I was bleeding money, and this inflation killed me. So I cut back and simplified this and lowered my expectations. But man, I'd really appreciate if you check out my channels and just like, subscribe, and share it if you find it helpful.
So it's TraumaType and Astrotype on
Correct.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jeff, like I said, this has been fascinating, fantastic. I'm so glad to have got to talk with you. And if you want to come on and do it again and get even deeper, I'd very much like that.
Yeah. I was worried because I sent you like on my show. Well, I did an interview with him like a week or two ago too, just by the way, you're gonna watch that. But I sent you like a little agenda, what we're going to talk about. I was like so worried I wouldn't be able to kind of like think of anything to say, but I couldn't shut up, I guess. So
Oh no, I had like 10 different questions every time we were talking. I had to pick one or two to get in. But one thing we were going to talk about that we didn't get to touch on is the masculinity, femininity thing. So maybe that's something we can visit on a future episode.
Sure, yeah, yeah. And there's doing something on StreamYard too, where you can like get a broadcast and I can get a broadcast. I'm not sure about that, but we
Oh
can.
yeah, I have a friend that we're gonna try that when she comes on. We're gonna try to stream it to both. I've seen YouTubers do that, so yeah,
Yeah,
I'd be up for learning how to do that too.
maybe in the next couple of weeks we can look into that. But yeah, thank you for
Okay.
having me on. I appreciate it. I'm not used to being interviewed. It's a nice change, I think.
Oh well, anytime. It was truly a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
I
everybody
learned a
for
lot.
watching.
Okay. Well, I will talk to you later.